Hi everyone, it's Karen Binns. Here we go again at Hi-Fi, the initiative for young recording artists and fashion designers that need help in starting their business and their launch into where they want to go. Today we have an incredible guest. Her name is Lauren Cochrane. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
And she's a senior fashion writer for The Guardian, as well as a brand new job I think you've got.
I do. Yes.
Where is it?
At Circle 08.
You see what I'm saying? This is the type of people we're bringing on Hi-Fi. Like, she's on fire at the moment. Fashion writer and now an editor for another fashion magazine that specializes in sports. It's so amazing that you had time to give us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
I was inspired by Lauren because I loved an article that I read, and it's something that she did for The Guardian, and it was about the struggle of new, young, emerging designers in the UK, you know, what they're going through, and, you know, how they've been sold a dream opposed to reality. You know, I would like to tap into that article because I feel with Hi-Fi, what we are trying to do is also feed as much information as we can to young people who are starting out, coming out of college, who feel, you know, do I want to be a designer? Do I want to be a stylist? Do I want to be a journalist or a photographer, you know, etc. And I just think sometimes when they're in college, I know they're taught to dream, you know, and ask the universe to give them all the space that they need and all the help they need. But we have to at least try and help them understand what it's like to really start and to achieve at least the first year of a goal. And I think that article had so much to say about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I said to you before, it's really interesting how much traction it got. When I put it on Instagram, it sort of blew up, you know, I mean, in in a manner of speaking. Yeah. But I think a lot of people kind of, you know, it feels like it's putting a spotlight on kind of something that people talk about, but isn't often covered in the press. And I think that's, it's kind of, it obviously shows that there's lots sort of to say. I mean, you know, it's sort of a drop in the ocean in terms of like what we can actually do about it and the issues that it involves. But yeah, maybe it's a sort of starting point for sure.
I mean, sometimes when I speak to young designers, as you well know, I work with New Gen, with Samoa, as far as, you know, judging who gets the money and to offer my services as a mentor. Speaking to young people, it's almost as if they haven't really been prepared to see how far they can go, at least their first year out of college. I mean, I always say try and get a job, try an intern, try and see how it all works before you make your decision. But that's usually with young designers and young stylists. But you're coming from a journalistic point of view. I mean, how do you feel about it when someone's going to school for, let's say, marketing and journalism and this kind of thing? What do you think is like, let's say, your top 3 things that are really, really important?
I think first of all, what you really need as a journalist, I mean, I suppose this makes it a slightly easier route than something like designing, in the sense of like that you can get, I don't know, like a 300-word article published while you're still at college. Well, you can't really do that, you know, you can't just make a dress or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It has a more of a transferable kind of skill set, isn't it? So I always think that is the sort of fundamental, really. That's what you want. That's the aim, right? To get your work published. And so I think a lot of it, I think there's so much to be said for studying. And I think university is really important, and we should be kind of helping more people to go to university across different communities in the country. But I also think, you know, we live in a world where you can kind of you can put anything online. Everyone has the facilities to put anything online, and so I always encourage students that I'm working with to do that. I mean, it could be like they can have a sort of old school type blog, or they can have, you know, even just using Instagram or TikTok or whatever, like to build up a profile, I think is really important. And you know, and that kind of it bolsters what they learn at university. So it's kind of almost like, I think if you want to be a fashion journalist or any kind of journalist, what the most important thing is to figure out how the words that you're writing down will actually be kind of like go outside of your laptop, you know? Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that sometimes is a sort of step that I think maybe is, I mean, it must be scary. I remember it being scary when I first did it. I mean, it's like, because you don't know if you're any good.
What made you feel that you could become a fashion writer, journalist? Like, what was it that gave you that kick to say, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is what I can do?
It took me a really long time to know what I wanted
to do.
Yeah.
What did you study when you first went to fashion college?
I didn't go to fashion college.
Oh, really?
Well, I went for my BA, I did an English literature degree.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Because, you know, I like books, so
yeah.
Geek. But but at the same time as studying for that, you know, and when you do a degree like that, you're reading like, I don't know, I mean, maybe 2 novels and a play a week. Like, it's really quite full on. And because that's what you're studying, right? You're studying, you know, different types of fiction, different types of writing. And but while I was doing that, I was sort of like getting into kind of like going out and kind of like you know, like pop culture, and I was reading like ID and kind of lots of magazines, and then I sort of had this kind of like a sort of almost like a kind of like light bulb moment where I was like, hang on, I can do the essays, but then maybe I could do it for one of these magazines. And that's kind of how it happened. And then I went to LCF and I did an MA. But I always say to students, I would think very, very carefully about doing that.
Oh, really? Why?
Because it costs money. It's a loan. It's not a student loan. I think that's still the case. I'm pretty sure it is.
Right, so we don't know that.
Yeah, so you end up with like, you know, sort of quote unquote proper debt rather than student loan debt. You know, student loan debt you can pay back in a sort of, you know, it's a program, isn't it? Whereas with certainly when I was at college, you know, you're kind of like, you have to pay back a proper amount because it's a proper bank loan.
Exactly. Hello.
Yeah, so I did that. But while I was doing that, I started writing. So that was actually more helpful than anything I studied on the MA.
Really?
The kind of...
See, isn't that strange? Because people would think, don't even try to go anywhere until you get your MA.
Yes.
This is what they're told all the time.
I think it maybe is a bit different now because maybe more people have BAs.
Right.
Like in the sort of fashion journalism. Because when I was... I mean, I didn't even think about doing fashion journalism when I was applying for a BA, but like, I think if I had, there weren't that many options.
Right.
Whereas now there's lots of those. So more people have those BAs, so maybe they want to get an MA as a sort of like point of difference,
right,
I guess.
I see what you mean.
But yes, so I started writing when I was doing the MA. That's, and that's sort of, it all sort of like kick-started from there. And I always say this to students as well, I didn't support myself doing journalism for about 5 years.
See?
So I had like 3 jobs as well as doing journalism.
What other jobs did you do? Because I did about 3 jobs.
Yeah, okay.
Before I even thought that I could even get a job in fashion.
Yeah, because also like I suppose it's different if you have like, if you come from a sort of more wealthy background, it's obviously different, isn't it? Because kind of you have different support, but I didn't. So I worked in a bar.
So did I.
Yeah.
I love it. How major is that? You worked in a bar too?
I worked in a bar like a couple of days, 3 days a week, I think it was. Or like obviously the evenings. And then I had quite weird jobs. So I also worked in a photo library, which they don't exist anymore, but it was like a sort of for people that had like these pictures of like very rare pictures of going to China after when China was opened up to Westerners.
Yeah.
And so they had all these pictures, and it was sort of like a business around that.
Like a library
kind of like
thing,
a library, yeah. And then I also worked, this is the strangest one, I worked in a robot factory.
Okay. Do we go further in that, or do we keep that moving?
I think maybe we keep it moving. Yeah.
Keep it moving. No, but anyway, yeah. I mean, I think that that's also important for young people to hear that no one just walks into a job. No one just walks into a space where I'm going to be a designer and I'm going to have my own brand, or oh, I'm going to be the next editor of Vogue or another Condé Nast publication, because that's not reality, you know. And I think that it's so important for at least anyone that's listening to this podcast. We are here to tell you the truth. We are here to give you the facts. We're here to let you know you can do it, but there's a few steps that need to be made. And I felt that when I did the jobs I did, it allowed me to see why I did those jobs. I did those jobs in order to pay for what I really wanted to do. And that's okay. It's not a fallback. It's not, oh, I'm not getting what I need to get. 5 years? Yeah, it took me about 3 when I moved here, because I was married to a British citizen, It took me about 3 years to work hard, to save, to be able to work in Paris for free. But because of that, my longevity in the industry is unlimited, you know, and it seems that you've had already such a great career and so many more years ahead of you. At the same time, we still have to think of, how do we hold on to this industry? How do we stay in the industry? Which it gives me a reason to pull back into, you know, speaking to you about why so many are not really making it. I mean, your real viewpoint on why the young UK emerging designers, so many of them aren't making, even though it's just a few are getting through, but we have the talent.
I think, I mean, basically from researching that article, I think it's a kind of real combination of factors.
Right.
I think one of the things that kind of came out from, which I sort of felt like I half knew, but actually became kind of quite concrete when I was doing it, which was that I think there are some incredible fashion courses in this country that we shouldn't, like, you know, I don't want to criticise what those tutors are doing, because they're doing amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But I think maybe there's a culture, well, this is basically what I kind of, from talking to some of those young designers and people kind of who are experts in that kind of world, is that they're not really given they're given the kind of ability to kind of explore all of their ideas and kind of their kind of creativity to sort of like the kind of nth degree or whatever, which is brilliant, but they're not also given just a short course in like accountancy or like so boring, but that is what like keeps you in business, you know?
Hello.
Yeah.
Like, it's as if the business doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And, you know, like we were both saying before, we love that they're pushed to be as creative as possible, but you have to sit in the clothes. You have to sell the clothes. You know, a chick wants to go to dinner in a dress. She doesn't want to just go to a club and jump up and down. You know, she wants to go in the afternoon for lunch, for a business meeting. You know, there's things in our lives every day that we need to be able to do in the clothes we just purchased.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I suppose the kind of counterpoint to that is that they're obviously not, the idea of these courses is not that every single one of those students is going to start their own brand. Okay. So therefore, they need to be encouraged to explore all of their creativity, because if they're then taken on by I don't know, like a Givenchy or a Burberry or a Chanel or whatever, that's their job. That's literally their job, to explore creativity, you know, in those kind of parameters. So I think there is certainly kind of there's two sides to it, but I do think because a lot of those students, seeing the sort of trajectory of previous students on those courses, right? They see the stars, they see the kind of ones that are kind of still talked about now.
Yeah.
And so there's a culture of like, that's what they want to do. So if there is a culture of that's what they want to do, then they do need those practical skills to be able to actually do it in a sort of consistent way.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the whole story behind McQueen and how he didn't even begin to think about doing a collection until he worked with how many different people, you know. I mean, he went to Italy and worked under hardcore tailors. It's like it didn't even cross his mind right out of college, I'm going to be a designer and I'm going to have my own brand. No, he had to be the guy that can nail it. Like from the first collection. I mean, I was at his first collection. I was at the first show. A friend of mine, Janet Fishcorn, invited me. And when I saw it, I was blown away. He had no money, but he had the receipts. You know, he had the years and the months working for people first. And you know, I just hope, of course, whoever's watching this, it's not that we're trying to blow your dream. We're trying to give you a realistic one. You know, is there another reason you feel that they're not really getting there?
I mean, I think the other kind of factors are the sort of general financial or economic landscape at the moment.
Yeah.
So post-Brexit,
which is a disaster.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
It's much harder. I mean, I think that is a sort of. I mean, I'm not in no way expert on that, but like I think it impacts on different retailers taking those young designers on because they're having to kind of like ship stuff, and those fees are higher. And then of course there's obviously just like the cost of living crisis. I mean, you know, like these students don't live in a vacuum, or these young designers, they don't live in a vacuum. You know, they're dealing with all those things that everybody else is dealing with.
I mean, back in the day when I used to come and visit here, you had all these young designers that lived in squats, including John Galliano, including, you know, Stephen Jones.
Oh yeah.
But for some reason, they managed to make it quicker and better. And it's kind of like, what was that model? For me, that model was not trying to be fabulous or be an influencer or be in front of the camera or be famous and popular. Just be fucking good, like really good at what you do. It's better to have two people, you know, give you visibility that are amazing because your product that you've created is amazing, instead of, you know, getting 25,000 hits. That's not going to make anybody jump up and down because they're going to forget about it in 5 minutes. Where if you see something that Stephen Jones created 20 years ago, it's a museum. That's what we're dealing with. That's the levels I feel that are probably more important than anything. They have the potential here. They have the mindset of creativity, but for some reason, they're not shown the reality of how to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any advice you think would be helpful, or anything you could say to the young people that, I don't know, there's got to be some sort of bridge between school and then the next step?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. It's hard for me to say because I haven't experienced that sort of trajectory myself. But I mean, I think maybe what you're saying about McQueen, you know, I mean, I don't think people really. I mean, I think, you know, obviously there's lots of McQueen stands out there. But,
no, they can think about it, but yeah.
But people don't really talk about what he did before he launched, really, do they? People talk about him being at St. Martin's, and then they talk about him launching and being this, like, you know, huge, like, shock to the fashion industry. Right. And so maybe it's that sort of pipeline, you know, actually doing those sort of hard yards at a brand, because if you don't learn the sort of practicality stuff at college, if you go to a brand, then you do, right? You kind of like...
Yeah, it's a straight up, it's another school.
Yeah.
So maybe they just need to go to a next school and the next school before they even... Because sometimes you can go and say, I want to be a designer, but then, oh my God, you're great in marketing. So, or you're great in creative direction. And, you know, these are things that I hope, and I'm not sure it happens, that are offered to them when they're going to school to design. Not everybody can be a designer. Yeah. You know, and I just wish I don't know if they're told the truth. This is my problem. I don't even know if they're allowed to be told the truth or to be given other options.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that happens, because I think it's the same with fashion journalism.
Yeah.
Or any job that a lot of people want to do.
Right.
Right? There's only a finite amount of those jobs.
Yeah,
there's a finite amount of designer jobs. There's a finite amount of fashion journalism, makeup artists, stylists, all these jobs. So, you know, but yet there's still a cohort of students doing it every year.
Yeah, it is.
So they need to be able to think about other options, because not everybody is going to be the next McQueen, you know?
At all. But I'm not killing anybody's dream or anything like that, but they shouldn't want to be the next McQueen. They should want to be the next who they are.
But yet also it's like, that might not be the thing that makes you happy.
Yeah, fair
you know?
enough. Yeah,
it's like, it might not be the thing that you might think it is, but it might not be. So I think it's also about them being, the students themselves or the young designers themselves being open-minded to think about, to not just kind of like be kind of hoodwinked on a kind of particular idea.
Do you feel sometimes that, I mean, I was speaking to Sarah about this, about this. Do you feel sometimes when you're a fashion journalist that you can actually give someone criticism that can actually help them in the long run? Have you ever done that before where it worked? Do you know what I mean? Like positive criticism, you know, in a way where, oh my God, you know, I have to say this so they don't fall, so they lift, so they level up.
I don't think I ever have done that.
If you did,
yeah,
what do you feel that some of the young designers need to hear? What do you think that could be? What could you say that can, how can I say, hope that they listen and understand in order to sustain themselves in the industry?
There's a lot to be said for taking it slow.
There you go.
And I think that is something that can really sort of provide that foundation, you know? So you kind of start slow, you sort of like, and within your kind of means, right? So, you know, you might have one stockist, and that's fine, you know, or whatever. Yeah. Or you might use e-com, you might sell out of a particular t-shirt or whatever. Yeah. But I think there's a lot to be said to kind of like just go at a pace that feels realistic. I think there's a lot of, I can imagine that it's quite easy to get caught up in that you have to kind of, what's it called, like take the moment because like people are talking about you now, but actually, you know, maybe there's a sense of like that you can kind of take that moment, but then you can also kind of think about it in a more kind of considered way. I mean, I suppose someone like Martine does that, doesn't she? She's quite a good example.
She's the perfect example of staying true, not jumping up and down or running too fast as if she's in a race. She doesn't care what anybody thinks. She doesn't care if you like it or not. She doesn't care that it's not for everybody, but she will sustain. And if you think about her business model and her name and her brand and the respect it gets, it's not for everybody, and she doesn't care. As long as it's enough for the people that get it and that understand it. And for me, that is brilliant. Like that to me is in my headspace as a New Yorker, the English move. Like, you know, when you're English, you already know you got it in the pocket. So you got a minute to spread it out when you feel like it. Because when it comes out hard. You know, like it comes out strong and it's electrifying. And sometimes I think that the young English talent creator, they forget that. They forget what they have. Like when you think of the big houses today, I can guarantee, and I've said this before in another podcast, there's at least 2 or 3 British students there. Yeah. Inside the team that are doing a lot of the creative work. So they have to first see what it is that they have, the value that they have. But like you say, pull it back, you know, take a minute and stop and think, why are you doing this? And how do you feel you can sustain, especially now after Brexit? A lot of people are jumping ship and they're running to Milan to show, they're running to Paris to show. We got to see what we need to do to keep them staying here. Perfect example, Charles Jeffrey. Like I went to a opening the other night that he had at Machine A with Stavros. Perfect example of English talent. He stays here, he shows here, and he shows out.
Yes.
And he has such a strong British aesthetic, and he's not interested if you're not interested. Like for me, that is like the epitome of the London vibe. Like, and when you see him, it's always a vibe. It's always good, it's always fresh. He's always on and popping, he's always in the mix. But he's still Charles. Not Jeffrey, yeah. He's still Charles. And I hope that that's a model that some people can really look at. He's one, Martine definitely. She's one of the most highly respected people in the industry. Mm-hmm. And she could probably wipe the floor of quite a few in the bigger houses. We're not gonna say any names because we're not trying to get canceled out. But we're just keeping it 100. She's that girl.
Yes.
And you know, I just wish that there's a whole new set of young people coming out, even this season, that looks and takes note of those two models, because they have sustained without going under. Okay, we all go up and down, you know, we all have things that we have to do, but at the same time, the name is still there. Like Roxanda Linsick. Can't come for Roxanda. She is globally worn. And she's globally worn by the majors. We're talking Hollywood, we're talking, you know, the president's house, we're talking the biggest wigs in the world.
Yeah.
And she has never stopped being Roxanda. And she doesn't care, she just does her. And she does it so well that she has managed to sustain her name.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so pleased that after what happened with Matches that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God, we can't even go into the Matches situation.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know.
That's a whole
thing. I still blame it on Brexit. I blame it on the COVID disaster, which we're not going to get into that either, because I always think that there's two sides to that story. But that wasn't helpful to anyone. I mean, I was just back home to see my family in New York, and what the whole COVID disaster did to New York, it's a shutdown. Like so many businesses, so many brands have closed. Meanwhile, I've just named 3 brands that shouldn't still be alive are up and running.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, they're a testament of what British talent can become and how they can sustain. You know. I also wanted to ask you, and you know, just a real opinion about education, like you said before. What do you feel also can be helpful, let's say before they get their BA, or the year that they begin their BA? Is there something you feel can be added to their curriculum, or something that can help them see the foreseen future in a realistic way, opposed to just a dream?
I mean, I think it's difficult now because obviously, like, the work experience culture is a bit problematic, or it has been. But I do think there's not much that you can compare to actually see, because I mean, you know, a lot of the time when you do work placement, it's not like you're kind of like being the editor or being the kind of like the creative director. But I just think there's nothing that can replace actually seeing how things work in reality. Right. Like, and just knowing like what X person does, you know, when someone says like a job title. Like,
there you go, the right job title.
You're like, oh right, I know what that person does. Whereas like, I guess if you're kind of, like, I don't know, I'm just to compare it to journalism because that's sort of the job titles that I know, but like, you know, if, you know, you're 18, you want to be a fashion journalist, and you're going to study that, you're about to go study that. Like to do like a kind of like, I don't know, like a month at any publication would teach you just sort of the real basic stuff, like what a sub-editor is. Like what, like words like, you know, headline and sell. I mean, all just like the real basics, right? And actually, I think that would give you a kind of, just a slight like boost of confidence when you actually go in there and you're learning a lot in a more theoretical way. Or you're kind of like studying, I mean, and that would be the same if you were studying design, wouldn't it? It was kind of the same principle.
Kind of, yeah, I guess, but I like what you're saying about experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're pushed to. I don't know if they're pushed enough. I don't know if they're there is a space at the colleges that can supply or that reach out to all the publications and the newspapers and things like that, where they know that there is a chance and say to themselves, oh, well, you know what, there's going to be 4 jobs this season. Whoever gives in the best gets that job. And that's just a placement.
Yeah.
But that placement will turn them out. It will give them all the tools they need. I feel that the tools, there's a lot of tools that are missing that can help them decide what they really can do, opposed to what they want to do. I'm not saying you should go against anything you want to do. Like, I had no idea I'd be in fashion, you know, but I was pulled into it from so many different ways that I guess I had no choice after a while.
It was your destiny.
It was my destiny. But at the same time, if I had the chance right now in real time to go to college about fashion, I would try to understand what are the tools I need. And you say it's 18 years old when they kind of go for a BA.
Yeah, if you don't like have a year out or whatever, that's the youngest you'll do a BA.
Right.
18 to 21.
18 to 21,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And maybe there should be some sort of a way where the schools can reach out to places that can give these little part-time jobs that don't kind of take too much time away from them, from their studies. It could just be 2 days a week or 2 weekends. But I just feel that it's not put into their headspace strong enough. That working on the side is okay.
Yeah.
It's not a letdown, it's not a put down, it's not, oh my God, I'm not doing what I need to do. That is a means for you to get where you really want to get.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get your BA, and let's say, like you said, you don't want to take out that insane loan for MA, do you feel that they should go and work for someone opposed to going real time behind a designer? Like, do you feel that they should go to a house or go to a paper as a sub-editor? You know, I'm just trying to think of things that we can say to them that will help them.
I mean, I guess you just see I guess saying you have done some kind of, you know, you've been in some kind of like different places where you've seen kind of how the industry works.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe after that you probably have more of an idea of the angles that you want to pursue, right? Like beyond the kind of obvious one of like designer or journalist. So I think it's just about kind of maybe being realistic and saying, okay, I'm going to have to get a part-time job, maybe behind a bar or whatever, you know, and then it gives you the sort of flexibility to be able to, like, if someone, I don't know, say you want to be a stylist, right, and someone brings you up on like Tuesday afternoon and says, can you be in the studio in an hour? Then you might be able to do that. Whereas if you had like, you know, a sort of full-time job doing something you didn't necessarily want to do, it might be difficult. I think it's about that flexibility. I mean, it's really hard to say, isn't it, though, because like obviously everyone will have very different sort of circumstances.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that pulls back to internship.
Yeah.
You know, which people don't like to talk about. It's kind of some sort of ugly word that people don't want to say. Like, I don't want to be an intern. Like, we all have to be interns. There's interns in a lawyer's office, an intern in a doctor's office. There's an intern in an architect's office. Everybody has, at one time or another, in order for them to achieve any sort of knowledge on real time and on ground, is internship. I think it'd be good to talk about that, you know, the pros and cons of internship. I did have another discussion with someone not too long ago about that. I said something about, you know, I don't want anybody thinking they can just walk into this world of fashion without being an intern. And then someone said, what are you gonna learn from carrying bags? A stylist carries bags when they're shopping. Wow, interesting. They go here, they go there. It's what you have in the bags that gives you the feeling that you are on a job. It's the weight of the bags that shows you, oh my God, I'm actually in the business. Like, this is it. I'm here. I'm going to be on set. Whether I'm steaming, I'm going to be able to see what happens in front of the camera. Like, oh my God, I'm a part of a team. that's my point of view on internship, as well as not everybody can afford to pay an intern. At the same time, they should at least pay their travel and their lunch, at least. And not everybody can afford to be an intern more than 1 to 2 days a week. But that 1 or 2 days a week could put you on blast to other people. You can be referred to people that you always wanted to work with. So for me, internship is a definite, but that's from my point of view as a stylist.
Yeah.
From your point of view, how do you see an intern?
From a journalism point of view?
Yes.
I think they can definitely...
Fashion journalism.
Yeah, fashion journalism, yeah. So they can certainly... I mean, sometimes I do teaching at St Martin's sometimes, and they do that as part of their course.
Right.
So they have like what they call a placement year.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, and they also, I think there's a couple of different courses I teach on, and both of them I think have like that as part, is built in to the course. And yeah, I think it's really important. I think, exactly, like it's about kind of, like we said before, like learning how these things work. It's not, I mean, like you aren't going to be writing the cover story. And that's okay. Because you'll maybe work with the person who is, and you learn from that person. But also I think you just learn from be absorbing the kind of like atmosphere of being in a real magazine or a real website or a real newspaper.
Like for instance, if you get an intern, what do? They do the copyright for you. They do all the stuff, and they clean it up, or what is it that they actually do? I mean, we don't have internships at The Guardian. Oh, you don't? No. Oh, see, that's a drag right there. So there you go. This is what needs to happen. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that are helpful.
They actually have this scheme, which is really good, I think. It's called the Scots Trust. And it's like basically trainee journalists.
Wow.
So you apply, and there's a certain number of like spots per year.
Right.
So we actually, and that can be across the paper. So you might, and I think you must say like what you're interested in, like sports, features, news, whatever. We've never had a Scots Trust trainee until this year.
Wow.
Who was interested in fashion.
And what time is it? 2024. See, this is what we're dealing with. It's just crazy.
Yeah, but she was brilliant. She wrote quite a lot of stuff for us.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So I think
that's the way forward.
Yeah,
really.
I would definitely say that's a really good scheme to look at for sure. Yeah.
If I asked you a message you'd like to send to the industry as a whole, as far as what you feel is that extra thing that they can offer or put on offer, it can either come from what we're trying to do at the BFC to the colleges or anything like that. Is there anything you feel that is missing that could be so helpful that we haven't already discussed?
I really think that there needs to be more financial support for students who don't come from like wealthy backgrounds. I think that's obviously goes across all education, but I think it's really sad in fashion because like Alexander McQueen could not, Christopher Kane, I think kind of like these names they couldn't have studied, and so I think that is for me the biggest problem, and the thing that is the money, and the thing that actually would really it would bring so many different points of view into fashion that aren't like sort of there kind of innately as yet. I think you have to be it's quite difficult to do that if you come from a poorer background. It's just you struggle more because you have to think about how you're going to pay your rent.
And how you're eating.
And how you're eating, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's New Gen and there's so many other ones, and you have Fashionista by Lulu really tries to help. But what we're basically saying, we need more. We need more money on both of those platforms, because all they can do is what they can do, and they do try. I'm on those boards, and I tell you, We try so hard to spread the money, but it would be great to get a few more sponsorships to put more money into it, because they're not understanding. I don't know if it's the Arts Council, but they're not really understanding the importance of the creative industries and the money that it actually brings into the country, and how it fluctuates throughout the society, and how much money is spent in our industry. You know, we hold the UK up. Like, we hold it, like it will not stand without the creative industry. And this is something that Hi-Fi has, you know, been trying to push as far as creatives, and speaking to people like you, trying to reach out to sponsorship and to say that we need help in order to help the next generation, and even the generation right now, in achieving a status of creativity that brings people back into the UK. We are about the UK, we are about holding it up. And in Hi-Fi, this is what we're offering. We're just doing our little bit, which is, you know, we can't afford to do as many as New Gen or as Fashion East, but we at least try and do 2 artists a season, and to help them, you know, with a launch pad to whatever they want to do as far as attracting money and attracting help and financial aid to whatever they're trying to do, whether it's putting out a song or a record by a musician, or putting out a brand. And you know, what can I say? Thank you so much for being a part of this and helping us with the information. I think information is the key to real help, and the real information, the truth, you know, because only the truth is going to level all of us up. Then we all win. But I'd like to thank everybody that's come to Hi-Fi today, and to listen to Lauren Cochrane, my new homegirl right now. You know, I'm not very academic, but she's gonna rub all that off on me today. But yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. I think it's been an incredible amount of information, and thanks to the people that have tuned in.